art newspaper is perhaps the most widely read arts journal, I think, and for many, certainly an invaluable source of information about the art world. And as the founder of the arts newspaper, you must be very proud of this success.
Well, of course I am. But I think I must give credit to somebody else to start off with. Umberto Alemandi founded the Giornale dell'Arte back in 1983. And the concept there was the absolutely key concept behind the art newspaper. That is, something that covered the whole art world. Previously, the art world was only covered by separate sections. So there was the art historians, there were the old art historians, and the modern art historians, there were the archaeologists, and there were the restorers, and everybody was doing their own thing separately, but nobody was looking at the whole picture. And the Giornale dell'Arte covered the whole thing. It also covered the art trade, but separately from the rest of it. Now, that was very important because the concept has always been, and I've absolutely kept this rigidly, that you cover the art market, but you absolutely do not allow art market considerations subtly to influence what you write about in the rest of the paper. It's rather like, you know, an ordinary daily newspaper. It has economic news and it has political news. We have political news and economic news because we aim to be like a real newspaper. In fact, we say we are the art world's International Herald Tribune, for example.
Yeah. How many people read the art newspaper? Do you have?
Well, we have 15,000 subscribers, but we also know from all the various studies that we've done of our readership that at least 3 people read each copy. So multiply that by, so we get up to 45,000 readers minimum. And then, of course, we do our daily papers during the big art fairs, and those get handed out, 35,000 copies in a few days.
That's quite an effort to put out a daily newspaper. How many people work on the daily?
We shift practically our whole editorial team down to Basel or Miami, and then we do freeze as well. We always work completely independent of the fairs, but they very kindly let us have a space, because you have to have a space there, because you stay up all night doing it. I said to one of my older journalists, I said, "My dear, we're too old for this. It's the sort of ugliness cure of this. It's so tiring." But the exciting thing about it is that you are living among the art market at that moment, and so you learn a lot, which you take away for the rest of the year.
How many correspondents do you have worldwide?
I have about 15 correspondents around the world, but I also have a big team of journalists in London, and we have 5 or 6. And then we have some people who work practically full-time for us. We have 3 journalists in New York, for example, and a separate office in New York. It's an expensive operation to do this. We make a profit, but we don't make a large profit.
Let's go back to the early days of the art newspaper.
Yes.
Can you tell us a little bit about your background, perhaps first, and then the reason why you founded the art newspaper?
Well, what happened was this. I'm an art historian. I studied history at Oxford and then art history at the Courtauld Institute. And I then became a curator at the Victoria and Albert Museum, specialising in medieval and Renaissance. So after 13 years of that, I thought, I don't have the calling to be a scholar. I want to be something else. I became the editor of an art magazine called Apollo, and after quite a short time, I realised that the general art history reader doesn't really exist anymore. There are specialist readers with specialist publications. So you have, Print Quarterly for the print people, and you have various academic publications. But the general reader is inexistent. And that was when I saw the Giornale dell'Arte, which I thought, at that stage I already spoke Italian. At that stage I thought, this is what the art world needs. And I got to know Umberto Alemandi. So he said to me one day, because a rival was launching something like it, he said, "Will you start a newspaper?" I hadn't the faintest idea what it entailed. I started off with myself, one other person and half a secretary in a room in Fleet Street, and we worked for 14 hours a day for 7 days a week for 2 years, after which I said, enough, we must have some more staff. So we got some more staff. And the thing has grown as things do grow. I warn anybody who wants to start a magazine is that you always run out of money. You budget for 2 years, and at the end of 2 years you have run out of money. So at that point you either close down and lose the money, or in some way or other you keep going. And fortunately, I had people who were prepared to keep going with you know, we cut salaries and so on. We kept going, and we were financed by Umberto Alemandi, and very generously, and they didn't pull the plug on us. So I mean, their patience has been rewarded.
Yeah, yeah. Have there been other crises during that time?
Just the occasional person who's got angry with us and has wanted to take us to court. That's a very Anglo-Saxon thing. The English, and particularly the Americans, are very litigious. I think no very great crises. I think that what we have learnt is that you have to have specialist journalists in each country. You can't write about Russia from outside Russia. You have to have somebody inside there who knows about it. But paradoxically, quite often it mustn't be a Russian, because they're too close to it, and so they want to report things that just look provincial to the people outside. You have to have direct experience, but be detached.
Success or highlights during the time, during the beginning?
Well, I think that we've won various journalism prizes, and something that the current team are very proud of, because I'm now the group editorial director, I'm not the editor for the last 3 years, is that for the last 2 years, the Art newspaper has been the only specialist newspaper or magazine to be shortlisted for one of the major press awards given at the British Press Awards, which is, you know, where journalists normally from the Financial Times, from the Times, get these awards. And that's a real accolade, the moment at which you realise that the big newspapers are taking you seriously as a source of information. And I think we can say that we are the journal of record. In other words, in fact, I know we're the journal of record because we get quoted and used by journalism courses in American universities and in various faculties, you know, teaching of archaeology and so on. They use our articles because we're giving primary material.
I think you're also known for speaking a clear language. And it's also important for you.
Well, that's my particular obsession, because at Oxford University, the thing they teach you, whatever subject you're studying, is that it is more difficult, but more important, to speak clearly. And however difficult it is, the subject you're talking about, the clearer you need to be. And Ernst Gombrich, whom I greatly admired and who was a friend, always managed to be very clear when writing about art. And one of the things I particularly disliked about contemporary art writing, and it's got a lot better now, but it was very, very bad in the 80s, was I thought there was a lot of deliberate mystification taking place. A lack of clear ideas was being covered up by very complex language that was supposed to make you think that things were deeper and more important than they actually were. So I thought, well, none of that. From the start, we're going to write in very simple, clear English. And to all new journalists, we give the Economist magazine's style guide, which also supports clear language.
You're also, almost political, campaigning newspaper.
Yes. Well, I think that, if you have the power to reach people, then you must use that power for things that you think are important. From the beginning, I have felt that the trade in archaeology was something on which there was a great deal of hypocrisy on both sides. On the one hand, there were the institutions and collectors behaving as though the trade in archaeological items was really the same as the trade in ceramics or old master drawings, no different, and should be completely free trade. And on the other hand, there are the countries that are rich with archaeological goods, like Greece and Italy and so on, who pretend that they can somehow or other control what happens to and protect what is happening to their archaeological goods. And these two positions were quite clearly completely unrealistic. On that one hand, people were buying items which gave us their provenance Switzerland. Well, very strange, you know. 3rd century BC Greek object, provenance Switzerland. I don't think so. There was a memorable court case in a New York court which said, you know, giving Switzerland as a provenance is no good. And at that point, things began to turn. At the same time, and unfortunately, I haven't seen a greater realism developing among the source countries. They still believe that by having laws that say everything that belongs under the ground belongs to the state will somehow protect what is there. And we know that it doesn't. And their readiness to re-examine these laws is not at all apparent. So anyway, to go back to the campaigning side of things, we've pointed this out. We have both sides of the argument, and we currently have a journalist who sits in at the trial of Marion True, who is the former Getty curator, who is being tried in absentia in Rome for having acquired works of art. She's been accused of having acquired works of art that were illicitly excavated and exported from Italy. We have somebody there who's reporting on every day of the trial, and I'm happy to say that we have 14 subscribers in the Getty Trust, so they're very interested in what we're reporting.